I'm going to do today is to talk to you about the challenges of leading and managing through disasters, atrocities, crises and emergencies, something that both operational first responders and those who command operational incidents will meet quite rarely, but when they do, it presents huge challenges, and it results in quite stressful situations for all involved, particularly those who are closest to the disaster, atrocity, crisis or emergency. And what I want to do, based partly on my experience after 30 years in the police service, but also almost the following 20 years in thinking about the challenges of leadership, particularly in a public leadership situation, is to run through what I've devised as the 13 principles of strategic planning for emergencies and crises. And what I have done is looked at these in 5 particular stages, and you'll find plenty of models out there, some excellent models such as GISEP, the multi-agency operating framework. But this is, I think, more of a practical application that could apply in any situation at any time and in any particular organizational context. And first and foremost, the first phase is that of initiation. And the first principle is to provide guidance at all levels. And this involves procedures and processes of decision making. And then when we move into the second phase, which is that of intelligence gathering, we need to look at the second principle, which is having that dual focus. And that dual focus is about focusing on emergency and crisis planning, and also understanding that today atrocities, those that are human led, are likely to lead to just as much tragedy and consequential circumstances for wider communities, in equal measure to disasters and civil emergencies. So it's almost a triple focus, a dual focus, triple focus in terms of looking emergencies, crises, disasters, and even a quadruple of atrocities. The third is to develop a collective response in terms of bringing together the intelligence that's required at national level, different entities, and within those entities, different levels of leadership. And then the fourth principle based upon intelligence gathering is the important aspect of risk management, to draw that intelligence together and to try and develop it in a way that we can at least get a feel for some wisdom based upon the assessment and the profiles. The third stage is the integration of responses to catastrophes. And the fifth principle that I highlight is the need for roles and responsibilities, and to match those roles to skills and experience. And then follow that with the sixth principle, to coordinate and collaborate. And we do this through a well-defined hierarchy, and within that, this flow of decision making, so that people know exactly where they stand and what they need to do. And the seventh principle, resource management, looks at the importance of procurement, allocation of resources, human, technical, intellectual, and the logistics in terms of doing that. We then move into the fourth stage, which is implementation, putting forward the plans that we've been thinking about. And the eighth principle, which is absolutely critical, is to engage in training and capacity building. And this involves not just ad hoc training, it's regular training where potential first responders are expecting that training at some point in the future, and to keep renewing their skills. So it needs to be regular, based upon exercises, and also in terms of assessments. And then the ninth principle, community planning and recovery, is where we start to look at what myself and my colleague Uma Khan has described as consequential leadership. We need to be looking at the long-term impact right at the beginning of either the declaration of a major incident or the declaration of a global pandemic. We need to be thinking straight away about the long-term consequences, and also not just through the golden hour. If we're looking at a disaster or an atrocity, that first hour is absolutely critical, but also we need to be thinking about the impact on communities from that moment onwards. And the 10th principle is good communication and information. This is not only about the first responders being able to communicate together, understanding where the rendezvous points are going to be, when all the pressure is coming on them from all different directions. Communication is absolutely essential, but it's also essential through the medium and the longer term approaches to dealing with crises, emergencies, disasters, and atrocities, particularly where the community is involved. And then the fifth stage is that of impact. And first and foremost, following on from what I've just been saying about consequential leadership, is the need to engage the public and educate. And we need to be ensuring the safety and encouraging cooperation. And there will be a groundswell of community opinion and community support that we need to tap into from the very beginning of the incident, but well through the implementation phase and beyond, in terms of rebuilding and restoring community confidence. And then we must always learn what went wrong. And this is so important when we're dealing with these types of incidents, that we need to accept that we're under pressure, that the first responders are under pressure, the commanders are under pressure, but to evaluate in a very realistic and objective way how things could have been done better, and to learn those lessons for the future. And then the final principle is that of ethical and legal standards. And whatever we do as leaders, we need to be ethical and following legal principles in what we do. And remember always that in these types of incidents, public expectations, public opinion will be high. And as we've seen in recent instances, public inquiries will follow, quite rightly, and the evidence base during those public inquiries goes into a very deep dive to look at not just what people have done wrong. It's not about a blame culture, but it's about a learning culture. And organizations, particularly first responding organizations, need to develop this culture of a learning organization, where we don't just look at the tame problems that are there. It's a wicked problem where the answers are probably not known and may never be known, but we need to look at those to determine how we do things better.